One of the reasons we use CAD now instead of the drawing board is that the software can automatically create repetitive line work for us. The array command is one such command. Given one object or set of objects, it can create those objects in a grid of your defining. Let's open up the array example file. In this example, we want to create a conference room display filled with chairs that are evenly spaced in rows and columns. We want to make sure that we can fit them in the space available. We could create construction lines for the spacing and then copy the chair over and over again. It wouldn't be that difficult to do in this case, but we can do it even faster with the array command. So type in the word array, A-R-R-A-Y, to start the command, or you can just use AR. It's also found in the Modify panel on the ribbon right here. Now there are 3 types of arrays. We'll look at each one in a different section, but they all work in a very similar way and use the same type of interface. Pick rectangular array. As the name sounds, it's going to create an array in a rectangular shape. Here's our conference room, and we want to create these chairs. Now, if you started the command through the ribbon, you tell Autocad exactly what type of array it is. But if you type the command in, you will select your objects first, press Enter, and then tell it that it's going to be a rectangular, path, or polar array. In this case, we want rectangular. Autocad will automatically generate a quick grid array for you. Now you can change things right on the fly. You can leave it the way it is, or you can grab some of these grips and make it bigger. Extend it out. Add more rows or columns, and alter the separation distance between each one. Right on the fly, right like that. Once you're completed, just press Enter. And just like that, with a few quick clicks, you created a whole bunch of chairs all at one time. Now these arrays are associative. That means they work together in one block. So that I can come back here and make quick changes to it later on. We can say, maybe the client says, no, we want fewer chairs or more chairs. When you select the array, you get a contextual ribbon tab. That's a special type of ribbon tab. It only comes up in the proper context. Thus, in this case, it's selecting an array. When you select an array, you get all of the options that you need right up here to change it. Some things you can't change, though, is like the type. But this tells you that it is a rectangular type of an array. Here it tells you how many columns and their spacing, the rows and its spacing, and the different levels. This is in AutoCAD, not in AutoCAD LT. The different levels adds a 3-dimensional space to it. If I type in 3, and then we go and take a look here, once I completed the command, you can see that it's drawn 3 different levels. And I can change that on the fly to however many I want. But in this case, we only want 1. Now you can't do that in AutoCAD LT because it's only 2-dimensional, but everything else is the same. So we select it. We can change the number of columns to 8. And we can define the spacing to be whatever it needs to be. We can make this 6 rows, and we can change it again so they are equally distant. Now, since we've selected the array, we have different grip edits available to us. We can pick Move, and we can move them all as a whole. We can grab this grip and change the distance between columns. This one will change the distance between rows, and this one will change the number of rows. And this is the number of columns. Or we can go with a different total column spacing, or even change the axis of it. It kind of shifts it. So you can create an array very quickly, and you can edit it just as quickly. There is a second array type other than the rectangular array. It's called polar array. This function will array objects based on polar coordinates. That means you can copy objects along a defined radius at specific angles. Start the array command just like you normally would, and pick the polar option. Now, what we want to do here is array chairs around this table. Select the objects that you want to array. Press Enter. And now we need the center point, and that's the center point of the circle that we're going to create. Just type in CEN for your object snap and pick the center of the table. Autocad will automatically generate some objects for you. Now it put 6 of them in here for us. We can change a lot of these things just with grip edits. We can change the angle, we can change the number, we can move it, etc. It's very easy to change things up here inside the contextual ribbon tab for the polar array. We can change the number of items from 6 to 8. And if we do that, it will automatically adjust the distance or the angle between them. Now we can change this angle if it will work out. You can change the total angle, in this case to 180. You can change the number of rows to 3, and now we have even more chairs, and we can change the distance between those. And again, these can be grip edited as well. You can make them unassociative, which means they'll all be their own objects. You can change the base point, which will change the start of the angle. You can have each object rotate all on its own, or you can change the direction in which they're rotating. So as you can see, you can do a lot with the array commands very quickly until you get the proper configuration that you want. So select it and then start playing with your different settings that you have. When you're done, just close the array and move on to the next part of your project. The third type of array is called the pathway array. This tool will array objects along a given path. That means you can copy different things in your drawing along a defined line or a polyline, spline, arc, etc. Let's say that we want to plant some of these bushes along the outside of this movie house here. We have 20 of them ordered, so we need to plant them all, equally spaced. The plants will need to be planted 60 inches away from the foundation of the building. So let's use the offset command. And we're going to offset a distance of 60 inches. Enter. So pick this line and offset it here. Now we're going to use the pathway array. We select the object that we want to array, press Enter, and now we select the pathway, which is right here. As you can see, it drew our plant all the way around. Now, how many did we say we had before? We had 20. So let's change the number of items to 20. Well, in order to do that, we have to change the type of path array that it is. Right now, it's set up to be a measured array. That means it's drawn all these lines at a measured distance in between them. And however many it needed to fill in that area, or that length in this case, it did, and it chose 30. And it's at this 102 distance. Well, we don't want it to be measured. We want it to be divided. So that says then it will put in however many of these bushes that we want, and it will equally space them out for us. So we come back here to the items column, and we type in 20 items and press Enter. And it automatically spaces them out to an equal distance all the way around. We didn't have to try to figure anything out at all. Now you can change the number of rows, just like that. and change the distances between them, just like with the other array commands. And again, you can change the levels. You can align the items. As you see here, as they go around the path, they're automatically rotated, so they're lined up with the pathway the exact same way the first one was. Or you can turn that off. This will keep them orientated the same way, just as if you picked it straight up and put it straight down without moving it at all. And you can change the Z direction, and this has to do with a 3D path, which you can't use in AutoCAD LT, but you can in regular AutoCAD. You can adjust the total distance if you want to shorten it up somehow, or you can adjust the distance between. But again, you have to be in the proper mode. So I can change the distance between here to 120, and it will automatically put in the number of items that I need. There is one more array tool that I want to talk about, and that's the copy array. It's not a real array command, but it kind of is. It's also kind of hidden, but it is there. The copy array tool is in the copy command. It allows you to create a linear, non-associative array. That just means that you can copy your object many times in a straight line, and it won't be an array, but it will be several instances of that same object. So let's look at this last plant here. Start the copy command, press enter, select the object, enter again, pick your base point. We'll just pick the center of the pot. And now you can see here on the command line that there is an option called array. So you can click it here on the command line or type in the letter A. And now you need to enter in the number of items for the array. So let's say 5. As you move your mouse around, that line is created, and the distance between each item is up to you. You just stretch it out, put it where it needs to go. Now you have another mode called fit mode. Just type in the letter F and press enter. And now you can go a total distance with everything else automatically spaced in between, instead of working on just the spacing. So if I turn on my O-snap by pressing F8, I can go in a straight line and put in another row of plants. Turning on F8, I can keep going. I'm back in the regular copy command, so if I want to array again, I have to type in the letter A. Type in the number that I want to array, and keep going. So that's another array. It's not a real array, but it's a way to get a lot of things in a straight line in one shot with a copy command. So it's a little trick that's kind of hidden that you might be able to use. Sometimes it might be easier to do that than the array command, like rectangular or polar. In this chapter, we've focused on editing objects. Every object has properties like color, line type, length, layer, and much more. Different object types have different properties. One way to edit or manage those traits is through the Properties Manager palette. We talked about palettes in an earlier section, and we've used them a bit from time to time. But let's take a closer look at this one specifically, because you can use the Properties palette in many cases to edit your drawing. To open it up, press Ctrl and 1 at the same time. I have mine set to be docked here on the left, but you can pull it out and move it wherever you want. Click, hold, grab it, and then drop it. And you can move it to either side, top or bottom. You can click on the edge of it and hold that and stretch it up or down, left or right. You can hide it, move that around, or extend it out. Right click on it to get to a lot of these other things. You can even change the transparency of it. Just move it back to the side again and dock it if you'd like. And when you don't have any objects selected, the Properties palette gives you the current information about your drawing settings, at least some of them anyway. Right now we have nothing selected, and the default colors, if we were to draw something now, would be set to by layer. It's on layer 0. We have the line type scale, the line weight, thickness, etc. Our plot styles, our view, and different miscellaneous options about our UCS. Now, if we go over here and pick something, like this polyline, for instance, it tells us it's a polyline. What layer it's on, what color it is, its scale, its overall dimensions. We can get the area of this right here. It's in square inches or square feet for us, the total length, etc. That's very valuable information. Now I can change some of this. I can change its color right here. I can change the layer that it's on. I can change the line type. Etc. So that can be very useful. Sometimes you need to alter the properties of more than one object. For example, this text. When I've selected this text, I can click here to edit the contents of the text itself, make changes. I can change the style so that it looks different. I can change the height, the justification, etc. And I can always undo what I've done. Now let's say I want to change the text style of all of these labels. Well, I can pick them all, or just a few of them, and make those changes to them, all at the same time, which is very handy and very useful. You can select objects of different types. I'll show you by picking everything. The Properties palette will tell you how many items you've selected, in this case 301, and when I click on this box, it sorts out a list of all the different types and how many of those types I've selected. So I have 76 lines, 168 blocks, 16 text objects, etc. Now I can get very specific on what I'm working with. So if I want all of the lines, I can pick it in the drop-down list, and I can change the objects of just the lines. And as I move through this list, I get a preview of what it's going to look like in my drawing area before I make the change. And this is very useful. Through my quick select, I can also develop a filter, meaning though I've picked everything, let's say I only want all of the text objects. Open up the object type, select mText, and I pick one of the properties that are available to choose from. In this case, let's go color, and I want everything that equals by layer, and I'm going to include these objects in my selection. So if anything fits this filter criteria, I click OK, and these objects are selected, and it lets go of everything else. So if you need to find something like that, for example, let's say a block, that's this lighting block here. We find the name of it, it's called lighting fixture. Let's say I want to erase all of the lighting fixtures from my entire drawing. I can select everything. Click on my quick select option, tell it block reference, and I go to name. From the name, I can select anything that's available to me in my selection. In this case, I want it to be the lighting fixture. I click OK. And then I see that that is all that I have selected. Press the delete key and they're all gone. So that's another way to select objects so that you can edit them. You can also get objects and change them with a properties palette. You can do specific kinds, or you can do everything at once. In Chapter 5, we learned how to draw things, and we created this project here. It was our simple landscape plan. Open that up. I've saved a copy of what I did in the Chapter 6 project folder, and I called it Chapter 6 Project. So let's start with that, or the one you made. Either one will be fine. In Chapter 5, we learned how to draw things, and in Chapter 6, we've learned how to edit those things that we've drawn. So now that we've drawn something, we're going to tweak it. We're going to clean it up, make it a little bit better. So first, what we want to do is erase all of these points. They're getting in the way and they're not really serving the purpose that we really want to do. So select everything in that area. Open up your Properties palette by pressing Ctrl 1 if it's not open already. Now use your quick select option and let's select all of the points. We'll say their color equals by layer and click OK. So now all of the points are selected and press the delete key. And we've deleted them. They're gone. They're out of our way now. Now let's go over here to our little pond that we created. Let's erase all of these hexagons except for one. Select them all and press delete. Now let's offset the pond with 3 units. Select it, see our preview, and enter. Grab the hexagon with the move command, grab the endpoint, and let's use the near command to put it somewhere here on our new offset from our pool. Now what we're going to do is rotate it so that the vertices line up with the offset line. So zoom in, type in RO for rotate, select the hexagon, press enter, type END for end because we're grabbing this endpoint. Now we don't know what angle that needs to be, so we need to reference this rotation. Type in the letter R, press enter, grab that endpoint again, type END, type END again because we want to grab this endpoint, and now type in near, NEA. Zoom in real close and find a spot that's there. It doesn't have to be exact in this case. Remember, type in REA for regen all so that you can see your arc better. Okay. We want to create a path array around the offset line to create a path of hexagon-shaped stepping stones. Now let's see what we can do. Hit Path Array, select the object, press Enter. Now we need to select the path. Well, since this is an ellipse that's been offset, we're getting some weird functionality. I knew that was going to happen, but I wanted to show it to you anyway, because sometimes CAD does unexpected things. Now, this is what happened. This is an ellipse, and when you offset an ellipse, it's no longer an ellipse that's created, it's a spline. So a spline can do strange things. So what we're going to have to do in order to create this array is to create some other object that's going to work like a polyline. So start the polyline command, press enter. Now we're going to start from this point here. And we're just going to draw different shapes. Turn off your O-snaps and then just draw somewhere around where this ellipse was. We don't have to be exact in this case, but if we did, we can use the near O-snap to click onto different places along our ellipse. There are many times in CAD in which things don't work the way you expect them to, and so you have to improvise. And this is one of those cases. So now that we have this new polyline, we can array around it. Use the polar array command, select the shape, press enter, select our path, and now you can see we have something that's looking much better than what we had before. It's actually going around the pond this time. Now what do we want to do? Do we want to have a certain amount of items, or do we want to have a certain space between them? Well, let's divide it up to make it even. And let's make it an even 40 stones, because that'll be an easier number to order. And do you want 1 or 2 rows? Let's just stick with the 1. When we're done, close the array, select the path, and delete it. And there you go. Now let's open up the wall where we have our door. Before we open up the wall, let's put a wall in here. Let's use the offset command. And let's tell it to go 8 units. Say, well, that's too big for what we're doing here. Okay, let's change that to 1. That looks much better. Now let's draw a line, snap to the endpoint of our door. Press enter. Now use the copy command. Copy this line And you can turn your O snaps back on by pressing the F3 button or by clicking down here on the status line. Pick your endpoint, then an intersection point, and press enter. Now let's open up the wall by trimming. Select these two lines here, press enter, and there you go. So now we have a real door with a real doorway. Now in the planting area here for our garden, let's clean this up a little bit. Let's use the fillet command, and let's look for a distance of a radius of 5 units. Sometimes polylines won't allow you to fillet them, so you have to explode them first. Explode is a command we haven't talked about yet, but an explode command will separate things. Like a polyline, it will break it down into its basic components of lines and arcs. They won't be joined together anymore. Hit the letter X, press enter, or you can pick on this box up here in the modify panel. Select our polyline, press enter. Now let's do a fillet with a radius of 5 units. And let's do that again, but we'll have a radius of 20 units this time. And this will help us to smooth things out. And you can radius arcs as well as lines. And if you didn't like this one, we can do that and here, and then delete. Now that has a much more fluid shape to it. And there you go. We've cleaned up our drawing a little bit, added some new features, we've changed it. We've given the building a wall, and we've put a door in it. And we can also trim our concrete driveway and sidewalk together. And so now you've created this drawing, and then you've gone through and edited it with the new tools that you've just learned how to use. The ability to create objects in AutoCAD is a must, and we have seen many ways to create data and several different types of objects. But what if you didn't create the drawing? What if somebody else in your office made it? Or what if it came from an outside vendor? Knowing about the data in your drawing is essential in order for you to be able to work with it. So let's open up the blocks and tables file for this chapter. There are several different ways and methods that you can list out the properties of the data or line work in your file. One way is to use the properties palette, as we've seen in other chapters already. That's great for one object at a time, but it can be overwhelming because the amount of information the properties palette shows you is, well, everything. So there is a feature that you can use that's called Quick Properties. This feature will pop up a window that will display a very short list of properties for the object you've selected. This feature can get annoying though as you progress in AutoCAD, and if you're working with more complicated drawings, then it can really get in the way. Many users turn it off, in fact. However, it can be very useful because it allows you to see the information about your objects as you hover over them. Let's turn this feature on. Go down to the status bar here on the bottom of the screen and click on the Quick Properties button. You can also press Ctrl, Shift, and P to toggle it on and off. So as I hover over an object, you can see right here that I get a bit of information about what's going on. It tells me here that the line work that I'm working with is an arc. It has a color called by layer, and the layer setting is on lighting, and the line type is by layer. That's the pop-up. Once I select an object, this window comes up. It's called the Quick Properties. As you can see, I get basic information, the color, layer, line type, as I do when I hover over another object. But I also get more than that. I get the coordinates for the center from the X and Y, and I get the radius. So this gives you a bit more information. Now I can click here on the options and find some different things that I need, or I can close this. As you can imagine, that can get in the way. When I select more than one object, it only tells me what they have in common, like layer. The same way with the properties palette. I recommend that you try the Quick Properties out, especially while you're learning AutoCAD. It will give you information on what's going on while you're doing it. But for purposes of this training video, I've turned the feature off for a couple of reasons. It can be distracting. Plus, I don't want that window to pop up and block your view of anything. So again, to turn it off, just press Control, Shift, and P at the same time, or come down here to the status bar and turn off the Quick Properties panel. A lot of the information that comes in that you can get just with the rollover tooltips like this. Those can be turned off and on by going to your options. Just type in options, go to display, and you can turn them off. All of these different things here changes things. See, I get no pop-up now. Same way with the tools or the commands. I don't get any of that information. If you're comfortable with this and you know what these tools are, or you're comfortable enough working with them where you think you'll be okay, you can turn those options off. I'm going to leave these all on though, because they help during the training session to help us know what's going on. I like this pop-up here because it tells me a bit of information about the object and I don't even have to pick it. I just kind of roll my mouse over the top of it. I also like to see something about the commands and what they are. And then I especially like to see the extra tools in the visualization when it shows you how to do things. I think you should leave these on right now while you're learning how to use AutoCAD. But if you find that they get in your way, turn them off. It's not a problem. AutoCAD will just keep going, either if those are on or if those are off. So another method to find out information about an object is the list command. So you can just type in list right up here and it will tell you where it's at. It's on the Properties panel in the Home tab. Remember, if you can't find a command on the ribbon, just come up to the Application menu and type in your command and it will show you where it is. It's right over here. It's kind of hidden, so you have to find it. But just remember, in the ribbon on any of the panels that have this little arrow right in the middle here, it means there's more commands to it, more options for you to look at and to see. So if you can't find something, you can pull those down, or remember to type in the command in the Application menu. Now, for the list command, you can either come to it here, which means a couple of steps, and just pick the list command, or you can type in list. The shortcut or the command alias is just LI. Now, the list command is very simple. Turn it on, pick an object, press enter. All of your information is given to you here in your command line in the text window. Here's my command list. How many objects are there? Well, I've found and selected one, and it tells you about it. It gives you a lot of information. It tells you that it's an arc, what layer it's on, where it's at. It tells you it's in model space or paper space. It gives you the handle number. Now, an AutoCAD file is just a database, ones and zeros, and that's all that the computer sees it as. Every object gets a handle. It's a unique identifier. So if this was a database, this would be item number 5A52. This will be unique and it won't be repeated. If I delete this, then that 5A52 won't show up anymore. I can use that handle to identify specific objects and files and a lot of other Lisp routines and special coding that you can do, but that's way advanced for me and what we're doing here. So we're not going to look at that, but that's there. It also gives you the basic geometry information of your object, your center point, radius, start angle, end angle, and length. Just press F2 to clear that out. Now, if I use the list command again, I can pick more than one object. In fact, I can pick every object that I want. Press enter, and it does the same thing. See, this was an arc. It's the same one. Now, the other object we picked was a block. We'll talk about blocks later on. Now, sometimes your list is going to go too far and the screen can't show all of it. So it'll pause for you so you have a chance to read everything. Once you've read everything on your screen, press enter to continue. And it will just keep doing that until you're finished. Now, you can always press the F2 button to open up your command line and see it again. Different information will be given to you about different object types. So we saw what happens when you list out a circle or an arc in this case. But if you select a closed polygon like this one here, and we type out the list command, it will give you different information, like the coordinates of all of the vertexes or vertices on there, the perimeter length, and the area. Let me show you again. This type of information will be displayed at the beginning of the list of the different object types. So you'll need it first. Now, if you click anywhere on the screen, it will continue on, just like pressing enter. So there's a lot of information here that you can get from the list command. Not all of that is possible to get from the properties palette. If I press Control-1 at the same time, I get the properties palette. And if I select this polyline, I don't get any of that information on the vertexes. I do get area and length, of course, and the layer information, color, etc. So there are some things you can get from the list command that you can't get anywhere else. And again, if you list all that information, you can come here, press F2, scroll up, select all of this bit of information, or just any part of it, really. And you can right-click and copy it. And now you can paste that information into a Word file, a spreadsheet, an email, whatever you need. If we needed to give coordinates to a surveyor for the wall or a contractor or something, we could just select the object, use the list command, and then copy and paste all of this information out into a format that the contractor, whoever it is, that can use. So those are a few ways to get out information from your drawing file into the real world. We've seen how to get information about our objects, but what if we need to get information that these objects create? For example, I need to know the distance between two lines. That info is not displayed in the Properties palette or in the List command. There are many tools, though, and utilities available to us in Autocad that will give us this information. If you go to the ribbon, on the Home tab, in the Utilities panel, here's where you'll find most of them. Now open up the Blocks and Tables file. I still have it open from when we went over our last chapter. Really, any file will do, but I suggest you open this one up to help follow along. Let's say you needed to find the coordinates of a point, or the coordinates of one of these light fixtures or lamps. Where are they located? Well, if you come up to the Utilities panel and select ID point, or just type in ID on the command line, find the center of the lamp and pick it with the left click. It shows you your coordinates, X and Y, and if you're working in AutoCAD, the Z. Very simple. You can only do one point at a time, but it's quick and easy to do that. It also puts it in your text window, so if you press F2, you can now select this point, your coordinates, copy it out and put it into a report, an email, etc. Now, AutoCAD also has another set of tools that will help you measure your geometric shapes. That's called Measure Geom. It's short, or a mashup sort of geometric measurements. Now, you can type in Measure Geom on the command line to open it up, or you can just type in MEA. It's also found right here on the Utilities panel. There are different flyout options for it: a distance, radius, angle, area, and volume. Each one measures what it states, and they all work in similar ways, but measuring the different types of data. So if you type in MEA on your command line, press enter, you will also get a list of all of these same options: distance, radius, angle, area, and volume. So however you want to use it, go right ahead. Let's start with area. Go to a room, let's say the laundry room. Maybe we need to find the area of this room so we can order enough tile. That's quite easy. Just start picking the points at the corners of the room. AutoCAD will create this green shape for you, and it will give you the total area. Wherever the green is, that's where the area will be measured. If you press F8 to turn on your ortho, you can only move horizontally and vertically. But if you turn it off, you can move anyway, and you can visualize and see the shape that's going to be created. once you're finished picking all of your points, press enter, and there you go. We're working in architectural inches right now, so it's giving us the area in square inches, and it's also showing it to us in square feet. The other nice feature that it adds in there for us is the perimeter, 42 feet, 1 inch. Now we know that we need 93.229 square feet of tile. So however much tile we need to order depending on its size, we now know. So that's a great bit of information. Just click exit and you're done. Press F2 and your information is right here. I can copy this out, select it, right click, hit copy, and now paste it in an email to my contractor who will then go and order the tile and come back and finish the flooring on my laundry room for me. Very nice feature, very useful. Now, let me show you some other tricks that you can do with it though. Start the area command again. And remember, the command line gives you prompts for different options. I can select an object. I can add up different areas together, or I can subtract out areas. Let's see what happens when I select an object. Now, how much space do I need for this refrigerator? Well, I don't know. I can only pick a closed polygon, and this is a block, so I can't pick it. This file may be a bad example, but I can find out the closed area of this wall. As you see everywhere that's highlighted in green, this is going to tell me that I have a 68.777 square feet of wall in this area. Now I can keep going in my command. I can find different things that I want, but let's continue with the area. Now, let's start with the add. Let's say I need to know a couple of different rooms. I need to know the total for tile that I'm going to need to order. Well, I can do each room one at a time, write them down, and then give them to the contractor, or I can just do this all at once. So we're going to pick add area, and let's just start picking our shape. And you can do any shape that you need. It cannot select arcs, but it will do straight lines from point to point. Once you've finished picking everywhere for your area, click enter. And now the command keeps that area in memory and allows you to continue on. So I need to do this room now. And I have my running O snaps on so that it'll automatically pick the endpoints for me. And that's a great tip. Once I've picked that shape, I press enter. And as I'm going along, it's telling me how much area that I'm using or going to need to use. Going to this room now because it also has tile. Press enter. Now I have these 3 rooms. Now this is a hardwood floor right here, so I don't need that room. Again, hardwood floor, and it looks like I'm finished for the main level. Now I have these 3 rooms, I press enter, and I have my total area. Pretty neat. Now I can pick something here, any shape again, press enter, and well, I can't continue on. I can't add more to it. I can't do anything else. I have to start with the add area in order to get started. So if I start with add and I pick my shape, whatever it might be, press enter. Now that I've added something to it, I can pick the subtract area. So let's say I don't want this part. Now the part that's in red will be the part that's being subtracted from the green part. So once I've picked everything, I press enter. And if that's everything I've done that I want to do, I press enter again, and here is my total. That's just the green area, not the red area. So that's nice if you have a special case. For example, if I wanted to work on the kitchen area, Make sure though that you start off with the add area. Pick your shape. I'm just going to limit to what I'm doing here to give you an idea so we don't take forever just clicking. Here's my area for my kitchen. Let's say I don't want tile underneath my sink. Well, now I can use the subtract option and pick some points. These aren't the exact points I need, but in order to speed things up, I'm just going to give you an idea here. So there you go. Now I know enough tile minus the sink area of what I need. Now that's very useful indeed. And the fact that it puts everything in your text window so that you can copy it out and insert it into a report or to an email, or so that you can just isolate it in some way, is also very useful. Now the other features work essentially the exact same way. So let's say distance. I can find the distance between 2 points. There it is. If I start the distance command again, and I pick my first point, I get the option to be able to select multiple points or just pick my other point. So if I select multiple points or type in the letter M, I can measure several different points. So I can get the length that I'm going to need across this wall, or I can measure the perimeter of something. And it tells you your total distance. So it's very similar. Radius is also very simple. I just find an arc or a circle, I pick it, and it tells me the radius. You will be given the radius and the diameter, which is very nice. It is limited though that you can only pick one circle or arc at a time. It's not like the volume or the distance where you can measure multiple points or multiple rooms. So you can only measure one item at a time, but that's okay. That's typically all you're going to need. Now the angle command, there are a couple of different ways that you can use it to measure something. You can pick the object, and it's very visual. It shows you the angle here, and it tells it to you. I can pick two lines, and it tells me the angle. So that sort of thing. You can also pick a vertex and then define the two lines. So start the angle command again, and it tells you here to select an arc, circle, line, or specify a vertex. So if I want to specify a vertex, I just type in the letter S, pick a point, say right here. Pick my first line, that's my starting line, and then it measures the angle. And it tells you what it is. Let's try that again. Start the angle command, press S to specify a vertex. I'll pick that point there, and now I'll pick this point here, and then I'll measure down to here. That door is open at 90 degrees. So that's how you do the angle command. Quite simple, very straightforward, pretty quick, and easy enough to use. Now, the last one I want to look at is the volume command. The volume command works exactly like the area, only once you've found an area, you give it a height, and then it will use the basic area times the height to give you the volume. So if we wanted to find the volume of the kitchen, I can find my area, and I'm going to simplify this area again. Press enter, and then I tell it how high to create it. So if I type in 3 feet, it gives me the volume in cubic inches, which is my basic unit. So it will give you your volume in basic units, or the units that you are being set in. So if you need to find a distance, a radius, an angle, an area, or volume of something, these are some very useful and great tools to use. When you're finished, just click Exit. AutoCAD drawings get dirty. What I mean is that they get bloated with data and styles that aren't being used anymore. They may not have ever been used, in fact, but were brought in through either other blocks, inserted files, or by reusing other files to start a new one. This happens. It's unavoidable. It can, however, get in the way or even slow down the program because it has to remember all of these things. One of the biggest deals is the size of the files. If they're too big, then you're going to have trouble emailing them to others, or they're going to take up too much room on your server or hard drive or a disk or anything. So let's open up the Architectural Annotation Scaling and Multi-Leaders file. I know that's a mouthful. This is a bloated file. Now, one thing that we're going to do is to delete what we don't need anymore, once your drawing is finished. Once an object, a layer, style, or block isn't being used anymore, you can purge them from the file. To do this, type in the word purge. Press enter. The command alias is PU. Now this opens up your purge window. There are two options at the top, unused items and used items. The unused items are just things that you can purge out of the drawing. They're there, but you're not using them anymore. Now the items you cannot purge, well, those are things that are being used. You can't purge them out of your system. So if you delete an item, is it really gone? Well, it depends on what it is. Objects are gone, but blocks, layers, styles, they stay in the drawing. They're taking up room in the file because it remembers them. AutoCAD assumes that since you put them in there to begin with, you're going to want to use them throughout the life of the file. If we take a look at this list right now of items that can be purged, it's empty. There's nothing that we can purge out of right now. So what does that mean, and how can I tell that? Well, if there was something in here, there would be a little plus sign so that we can open it up and we can view everything that can be purged. Let me show you. If I select the items that cannot be purged, you see now everything has a plus sign by it. If I click it to expand it out, these are all of the blocks that are in the file. I can scroll down, and some of them have weird names like this D36. Others have things like stair, revision, outstanding con, etc. But I can't get rid of them. Well, let's make it so that I can get rid of some things. Well, that's pretty easy to do. Use your erase command, and let's just erase all of this stuff here. Don't save the file because we may need it later on, but I just wanted to show you some things. Type in purge, or just the letter PU, and now here we have items that we can purge out. We have some blocks, we have some layers. We're not using them anymore. So if I expand it out, here are a list of different blocks that we were using in that area right here, but we're no longer using them. So maybe we don't need them. Here are different layers that we don't need anymore. Those objects were on those layers, but they were the only objects that were on these layers, so we don't need them anymore. So what do? Well, you just hit the purge command. It will ask you now one at a time, which one of these items do you want to purge? Do you want to purge block star D27? If you do, click purge this item. If not, skip it. If you want to purge everything in this list of blocks, just say purge all items. And everything is gone. You can look through your list, you see everything is not there, so we're good. We just decrease the size of our file, just like that. Now, there are items that are nested. Nested items can be a pain because it was very difficult before in the past to get rid of them, but now it's a little bit easier. Let's undo this so we can see it again. Start the purge command. Now our items are here. Sometimes a block will have a layer in it that's only used in that block. Well, if so, then it won't be listed in our layers because it's being used in a block. Now, once we get rid of the block, nothing is using that layer again. So it will come down, and here we'll have to do the purge command again. So that's annoying. What you can do is purge nested items. So that will get rid of all the stuff that's being used by other things that you get rid of that nothing else is getting rid of or using. So it's complicated, I know. But let's say we have a block and it's using layer XYZ, and it's the only thing using layer XYZ. If we purge the block, the layer XYZ is still in there because we didn't tell it to purge it because it wasn't listed. When I use the purge command, the only items that will be purged are what are listed here. So sometimes items are nested inside the other purgeable items, so that means they're being used. Well, if you want to automatically purge nested items that aren't being used anywhere else, you can click the Purge Nested Items. Select Purge All, pick Purge All Items, and it will get rid of everything that it can in one shot. Otherwise, you'll have to go back and use the purge command several times until nothing shows up in your list anymore. If you want to purge something specific, like just one block or just one layer, you can come here, pick the one layer, and select Purge. Not Purge All, just Purge. And you say, yes, I want to purge this item, and it does, and it leaves everything else in. Now that's a good way to clean up your file just a little bit, but not just delete everything. Once you're done working in your file, you've submitted it, you've printed it, it's done, it's good, you're not going to work on it anymore, or at least odds are you're not going to, that's a good time to purge. Or if you're going to email a file to somebody, that's another good time to purge your file. Otherwise, I suggest waiting until you're done to purge the file, unless it's just way too big and you need the space. Because you never know when you're going to need that extra layer. If it was brought into there at one time, you're probably going to need it again, odds are, but you may not. So I would wait to purge till you're all done, and then save your file, and then go back about your business. Because once you purge it, it's gone. You can't get it back unless you recreate that layer or that block or that text style. But if you have a good template file that keeps everything in it according to your standards, you can always reinsert it or bring it back in. So just be careful when purging, make sure you really want to, and then purge away. Have you ever made a mistake? Well, don't worry, you will. That's where the undo command comes in. This command is found in most computer programs and is one of my all-time favorites. It helps to keep me honest. There are several ways to use the undo command in Autocad. You can simply type in undo, or you can type in the letter U. You can also use the Windows shortcut key of Control-Z. If you use the Autocad command of undo and not Control-Z or not the letter U, then you get several options as you saw pop up. You can also use the quick access toolbar undo right here. If you click the arrow that's shown, you can get a list of items you've done recently and purge more than one command at a time. If you type in the word undo, you can type in the number of commands or operations that you want to undo. So if you want to undo the last one, just press the 1 or enter because it defaults to 1. Or you can undo the last 5, press enter, and it will undo the last 5 things. Now note undo has no effect on some commands and system variables, including those that like open or close or save a file in a drawing, some that display information like the properties palette, or some things that change your graphics display, or regenerate the drawing, or something that exports the drawing into a different format. You can't undo those. You can mark in time places of reference for the undo command, but that's getting rather complicated right now. And to be honest, in almost 20 years that I've been doing this, I have never had a need to do that. So you can, let's say, okay, I'm going to work on a concept design. I want to mark this place in time. So you would type in the word undo, and you would click mark. And so now AutoCAD knows this point, everything I do from here on is set. So I can do some things. Let's say, copy, move, and maybe I'll draw a line. Now if I type in undo, I can go back, and this will bring me back to my mark. So that's kind of cool. You can go all the way back to the very beginning. You can set up some controls, go back to the beginning, just go back, make a mark, etc. But honestly, all you're really going to need is the Control-Z, or just the letter U for undo, or use your tools up here in the quick access toolbar.